This video has a cold open. I really like this scene. It's a fantastic introduction for both Brother Ray and the setting of this plot. It doesn't suffer so badly from Season 6 palette, it's a cute tonal departure from the season so far, and there's an awesome surprise at the end of it in the return of a fan favorite character. What's not to love? I guess they do kind of draw it out a bit, but it's You know, they didn't have to show Ian McShane overseeing the construction of a sept and all the meticulous manual labor that goes into operating such a community, but they did. And it was a great decision because by the end of the episode, I give the slightest crap about Brother Ray. What I'm saying is that this scene could have just reintroduced the Hound, but instead it goes out of its way to communicate meaningful information about his new circumstances. Is it enough? We'll get into that. I get that the Hound is supposed to be super strong, but carrying one of these logs that 4 men are struggling to carry is a bit much. Now, I wouldn't be saying that about a scene that had bigger flaws to discuss, which should tell you how little I have to go on in terms of criticism for this scene. And I mean this scene, just the cold open. After the opening credits, it's a different story. Here's a sneak preview of what I think of that scene. Yeah, it's a little weird. Hey everyone, look at what this lady is chopping. Impress upon your eyes what particular vegetable she's humiliating.
Potatoes!
The Broken Man is the only mid-season episode across Game of Thrones' 73 installments to feature a cold open, the rest all being season premieres. This is kinda weird, and I really like it as a dramatic decision. The mere sight of a scene happening before the opening credits does something to an audience who expects the credits first. Brian Cogman, who wrote this darn thing, said that this was done to avoid Rory McCann's name in the credits spoiling the Hound's return to the story. Which is clever, but apparently wasn't worth considering when they put Kit Harington's name 5th on the bill in the episode following his character's death, or when Joe Dempsey returns to the show in season 7. So I'm a little conflicted because I love the cold open, but I think the reason for its implementation is inconsistent at best and silly at worst.
Fantastic! I've got a few things I'd like to yell about now, so we can all start.
The Broken Man. So in the first scene proper, Brother Ray gives befriending the doggo a shot by making fun of how he got beat up by a girl.
He was a woman.
As all great friendships begin. The dialogue is fine and I adore the performances, but narratively this scene is an industrial strength question mark. Sandor got wrecked in the season 4 finale almost 2 seasons ago. Since then, the other people present at that engagement have gone off to do a whole bunch of shit, some of which wasn't excruciatingly boring. Now yeah, the way the story is presented isn't necessarily chronological, but these storylines do collide again later on. Via Sansa, Brienne is tagged onto the story of Jon Snow, who meets Sandor at Eastwatch in season 7.
You're the Hound.
For the sake of being a pedantic arsehole, let's track what happens in each of these stories between the fight in the Vale and this meeting at Eastwatch. Brienne miraculously stumbles into the exact person she's looking for several moments after miraculously stumbling into the other person she wasn't even looking for, then follows her across the continent to wait in a shack to do one job which she fails miserably at so she can go do something pointless she'll never face consequences for. Then she saves Sansa, Theon's here too. They go to Castle Black, hang out for a bit, Brienne goes to Riverrun for a cheeky chat, comes back to Winterfell, fucks around for a bit. From there, Jon goes to Dragonstone, a few battles happen, Davos picks Gendry up, Jorah arrives from Old Town somehow, and they all go to Eastwatch. All of that happens between Brienne fighting Sandor and Jon meeting Sandor. What was the Hound up to? Well, in this conversation, Ray is speaking as though he's barely ever interacted with him. Given the state of the Hound's leg, it seems like it's been a few months since he attempted his new all-terrain tumbling routine. The sept isn't finished yet when Lemoncloak's men burn it down, so that's only a few days maximum after this conversation. Then Sandor's warpath is probably a few more days, and then he rides from the Riverlands to the Wall with the Brotherhood, which I'm gonna go out on a limb and say is absolutely going to take less time than Brienne traveling to Riverrun and back, plus Jon traveling from Winterfell to Dragonstone to Eastwatch with enough time for all these battles and additional transits. What I'm saying is that unless we accept that Tormund has been keeping these guys in his prison for like 8 months, or that the Brotherhood made an off-screen detour to Karth on their world hangs in the balance crusade against the spooky ice zombies, these timelines just don't add up. Now, if Brother Ray was already familiar with Sandor, acting like he'd known him for a year, or if there was more passage of time indicated via the completion of the sept, this wouldn't just add up time-wise, it would also fit better tonally and narratively. Judging by Cogman's interview with Ew, the audience is supposed to feel at the end of this episode like Sandor has lost the only friend he's ever had in Brother Ray. I don't know about you, but I didn't really get that. at all. So if instead of an introductory conversation they already had a rapport at the start of this episode and we saw the Sept go from initial construction to complete or even in use across the length of the Brumu, then the timelines are way more sensible and the audience benefits from a more concrete emotional connection with Ray through Sandor. And another thing, this introductory conversation is kinda pointless because, well, we already know everything that's said in it. We know that Sandor is tough as nails, that he has great scorn for everything, that he's a social outcast, and that hate motivates him. The only new information coming at us in this scene is Ray's relationship with religion, which isn't really anything special. And yeah, the dialogue is fine, I'm just saying that this whole thing is a wasted opportunity, especially considering that Ray is based on Septon Merribold, who delivers one of the best passages of dialogue in the books, which in this episode is conceptually split between this expository sermon from Ray and this, like, single line at the end.
Violence is a disease. You don't cure a disease by spreading it to more people.
Cogman says that Sandor opens up to Ray, but no, not really. He refers to him as a friend once in the next episode.
I killed a friend of mine.
And big picture, he fails to embrace Ray's teaching by the end of his story and his life. I've said this before, reintroductions are the perfect place to establish change and prime the audience for the story to come. If the thematic purpose of bringing the Hound back into Game of Thrones is redemption and non-violence, as Ray outlines in this episode, then that's fucking moot, isn't it? He compels Arya to forget her vengeances and then goes off to performatively murder his brother, who was already as good as dead anyway, so it's not even functional. It's about as purely vengeful as an act can be. There's nothing heroic or redemptive about it, so what was the point? Remove Brother Ray's insight?
Violence is a disease.
And really nothing changes. Remove this entire isolated Sandor storyline and nothing changes. When boiled down, this plot reveals itself as a reintroduction for the sake of reintroductions. It accomplishes nothing beyond placing the Hound back in the show. Is it bad? Not really. It's a bit weird, but it's still among the best written subplots in season 6. And that I can say that while still whinging about the immense missed opportunities for something brilliant here is a perfect distillation of the core issue with this season. Season 6 comes nowhere close to the outwardly silly and insane heights of season 7 and 8. Dialogue in season 6 is utter bullshit with much less frequency, and yet even the best of its subplots are insipid, superficial, reverse-engineered husks of stories that exist only to propel characters to whatever end state the writers desire. So this brings me to my big boy question of the day. Month. Whatever. Was bringing Sandor back necessary? Ultimately, no. You could write the rest of the show without him and just leave his fate ambiguous on the side of that hill, but the same is true of a lot of characters, and I think that's missing the point. It's not that Sandor's inclusion in the last 3 seasons is unnecessary, it's that it's unfulfilling, to nobody's surprise. The Hound is so fucking cool, and everyone in the audience loves him.
Do you have any last words, sir?
I am hilarious, and you will quote everything I say.
The ways we got to know him over those first 4 seasons leaves us rooting for this arsehole, kind of like Jaime Lannister, except the Hound never had a bath. To watch him learn and grow from his calloused, violent, ruthless past and embrace the wise, gruff, watchful caretaker that was underneath all along, that's what we signed up for. And honestly, that's kind of what this reintroduction promises with its talk of pacifism and of redemption. So when he accompanies Arya into the heart of darkness and tells her only at the last minute to not let violence and vengeance consume her, which clearly has already happened, and then proceeds to do something purely out of vengeance and bloodlust and rage and spite, well, it fucking sucks. And that's the Hound. It's all so wasted. Ray's teachings may have compelled him to bury the family he once doomed, and yes, that's a lovely moment, but it's meaningless in the grand narrative. It'd also be neat if we'd ever seen Lem Lemoncloak before, or if instead of Lem, they gave his role to someone we already knew, like maybe if Anguy had gone rogue out of desperation. Then this story could kind of simultaneously reflect a rise from violence and a descent to violence. That's it, I think I'm done. It's a complicated set of scenes and I hope I've communicated my thoughts on them effectively. The guy got out of the violent line of work he was extremely good at, then everything he loved was ripped away from him and he's dragged back in. Sandor is basically John Wick, but instead of Theon, it's this asshole, and instead of a cute dog being killed, it's Winston. Midgeridoo has a chin wiggle with Grandpapa about fucking wifely duties, which we'll get to, but when he first walks in, he's like, "Oi, what are you up to?" And she's like, "Reading a book about how women should be subservient." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know that one," and starts reciting the particular passage she says she was just reading, but then she interrupts him to finish reciting that particular passage. Then he's like,
You learn quickly.
because he's so impressed that she can read something that's fucking in front of her. I get that the purpose of this is to show that Marjorie's performative newfound devotion has the High Sparrow convinced, but it's so goddamn clunky. And trust me, I know clunky. I once forced a John Wick reference into a completely unrelated Game of Thrones video. Anywho, the Queen repeats the bollocks about her never having given a rat's about the poor, and he agrees that yes, the poor are disgusting, and I really have to wonder what this story is trying to say, especially when you consider that instead of being defeated on ideological grounds, the High Sparrow's philosophies are dealt with in much the same way Stannis' army was. Like, the guy opens up a can of classism.
The poor disgust us because they are us.
And just leaves it there on the table. He doesn't even scoop it out. There's no commentary from this religious leader who represents a populist movement of downtrodden peasants agitated by being exploited by the elite class in years of fruitless warfare beyond, "Yep, we sure do hate the poor," with a vague aftertaste of, "and we shouldn't." Wow, with such cutting rhetoric like that, it's a wonder that he only rose to power recently and not 20 years back. Anyway, the Who's Spoo pulls another conversation from his back pocket, and suddenly we're talking about Marjorie's marriage. Turns out Tommen has complained about how nobody wants to fuck him, and so to ensure that they can
Continue our good work.
he compels her to do him. Now, I'm not here to pass moral judgment on anything, just to investigate what makes a story good or bad, but come the fuck on with the religiously sanctioned, nay, religiously mandated wifely duties that never go questioned.
Congress does not require desire on the woman's part.
Considering that this comes from and also goes to precisely nowhere, it's surely just an issue they invented to bring Old Mate in to see Marjorie. I would have actually enjoyed a scene where she and Tommen discuss their marriage and the adjustments they've had to make in their newfound faith, be it genuine or otherwise. That sounds pretty interesting. However, we actually don't see Marjorie and Tommen together again at all after they're reunited in Blog of My Blog. Another classic Season 6 moment where a character tells us about a cool scene we could have had but didn't. Then he threatens her nan, which is the only thing in this scene relevant to the plot. I appreciate that the High Sparrow isn't one to barge in and ask Marjorie to move the plot along. He's the kind of person who would take the conversation slowly before getting to what he actually wants. I just think it'd be better if the scene didn't take 2.5 minutes before presenting anything that's actually relevant to anything.
My grandmother?
Yes.
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 He claims that Olenna is
An unrepentant sinner.
even though she's a sweet old lady who would only hurt a fly if the fly sucked big time. Olenna makes fun of Septa Unella and threatens her even though they have basically the same name just flipped around. Olenna Unella. Olenna Unella. Olenna Unella. Midge catches her up on the Loras situation.
The faith will allow him to return to Highgarden. He'll have to renounce his name and title.
Have you lost your mind?
And live.
So this is mental. Loras is the heir to Highgarden.
He is the heir to Highgarden, the future of House Tyrell.
Oh, sorry, didn't realize you were going to say that. I know that the writer's plan is to have a cool epic moment happen at Loras's thingy, but what's the High Sparrow's plan here? To disinherit Loras so that Highgarden passes to... Hang on. The script just says hot pie in big red letters. That's weird. Olenna tries to take Marjorie home, but that's not gonna work because Umbrella would, I don't know, hinder that in some way. Does Marjorie think she can save Loras if she stays in the city, but she tells Olenna to leave the city because it's dangerous and she can't be saved? What? I don't know, it seems like it'd be pretty easy for Olenna to take Marjorie right now, and they just don't do that. You know, have her men deal with the big lady,
Bash you about.
and whisk the queen out with some of the Tyrell army. Why not? Marjorie clearly isn't actually indoctrinated. They did this last episode with Jaime. You can't just have a character suggest a valid idea
You will leave for Highgarden today.
and then have another character say, no, fuck that and fuck you, for no real reason. After receiving a napkin doodle of a rose,
Another golden rose, how original.
Olenna is approached by Cersei as she prepares to leave. The Queen Mother tries to convince her to stay by invoking the lives of her family.
You love your granddaughter. I love my son. It's the only truth I know. We must defend them.
But it doesn't work, even though, yeah, she's right. Loras is.
The heir to Highgarden.
And Olenna says,
I will never leave you. Never.
but here she goes, leaving the only people in the world she loves to die, like the Blackfish does. Again, this is because the writers want Olenna around for season 7. This is their way of preserving her. They need her out of the city, so she leaves the city. That's it. Not the Olenna we know, man. So basically what's happened here is that the High Sparrow, who knows that Olenna is a switched-on political player who practically rules through her son, more or less organized a meeting between her and Marjorie. But why? The stated reason is that he fears for her soul and shit because she's a sinner, but come on. What has this guy done that hasn't had an ulterior motive? Well, he does this after the Lannister-Tyrell ploy to seize control at the Sept, and the result is Olenna's departure from the city, so it seems that the whole point of this was the removal of Cersei's last remaining ally, because they were posing such a threat, I guess. But instead of imprisoning Olenna for apparently being a sinner, like he did with Cersei, the High Sparrow instead chooses to let her granddaughter tell her to naff off without a fight, which she could have just not done. Given the trigger of your grandmother is a sinner and I fear for her, Marjorie could have asked Olenna to repent to the faith in whatever nonsense way the guy comes up with next. So if he wanted Tyrell power gone from King's Landing, then this plan of his is contingent on Marjorie's awareness of the danger they're all in. It requires her to not have been convinced by his cult's reprogramming. Again, if Marjorie was truly under the Sparrow spell, she wouldn't have told Olenna to leave. Olenna could have used this to join the faith and undermine their power from within fucking somehow. The point is that the High Sparrow wanted her gone, and his plan for accomplishing this hinges on all of his bullshit not having worked on Marjorie, which there's no way of telling given that she wants him to think that it has. Not to mention that Cersei could have convinced Olenna to stay by reminding her that her entire family's lives potentially hang in the balance, which probably would have worked if Marjorie hadn't doodled a flower. Wait, when the fuck did she do this? Surely the faith keeps a close eye on her, right? And she didn't know she'd be meeting with Olenna until the previous goddamn scene, so unless we're to assume that she's been walking around with this napkin in her prison pocket for weeks on the off chance she'd get the opportunity to slip it to her nan, this drawing appears from fucking Hammerspace. I'm not a stickler for seeing the origin of every prop, but come on, dude, she's standing in front of a book in the first scene. It would be so simple to show her tearing the corner off a page. Maybe the High Sparrow sees the torn page later, tipping him off to her true allegiance. It's not much, but it's a little through line that's just sitting right there, and it'd make this headache a little more bearable. So this is all an outrageously convoluted way of telling you that this plot bores me like a tunneling machine, and there's not even anything to show for it, because of course the result of all these meticulous political schemes and insightful sounding philosophical monologues is,
where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
in short, fuck all this noise. Back to Jake Snake, who we haven't seen since the when he left Castle Black with his half-sister, this old guy who's super into him for some reason, a big red beard, and Melisandre too, not that you'd know. First on their circuit of the North to petition randoms for soldiers is a bunch of weirdos. This is by far the best of these scenes, so let's get the praise out of the way. The wildlings' resistance to joining Jon makes sense. They signed up to fight the dead to preserve their people, not to fight Ramsay and whoever the fuck to preserve Stark rule of the North. Jon's speech about how he shouldn't be petitioning them at all makes sense, as does his reasoning that, like it or not, the wildlings will be fighting the Boltons, and if they join him, they might win. 1-1 dispelling the general hesitancy by simply saying no is a feel-good moment for sure. Tormund assuring Jon that the wildlings keep to their word is also good. However, everything else out of Tormund's mouth raises me eyebrows straight off my face. I mean, he's right when he says,
if it weren't for him, none of us would be here.
And
I'd be a pile of charred bones just like Mance.
But in between those things, he says,
all of you would be meat in the Night King's army.
And I beg your fucking pardon. They all saw the blue dude at Hardhome, sure, so they all know of him, but he wasn't wearing a fucking name tag. Nobody referred to him by any name until when Bran just weirdly blurts it out.
He saw me! The Night King! He saw me!
And now suddenly Tormund has embraced that name for Officer Zombie Man too. Alrighty, it's just how on Planetos did they both independently come to that exact same name around the same time? Whatever, fuck it. After a bit, Lord help me, Tormund says,
he died for us.
Man, they were so close to something cool with this. Yes, Tormund, this motherfucker came back from the dead-ass dead. Steer into that. Use that. Jon as a conflicted religious figure is so much more compelling compelling than Jon as a conflicted political leader, mainly because we've already seen Jon as a conflicted political leader, but also because it takes advantage of his story, that is to say it's a natural fucking development. And yet, this is the only time anyone tries to make the argument that Jon should be treated as special for his death and undeath, and even then it's only the political context of his death that's relevant to Tormund and the wildlings here. When we get to Deepwood Motte, I know they want to portray the negative consequences of Robb's campaign inflicted on the North, but after all else fails, why not have, probably Davos, announce that Jon was resurrected, and maybe that convinces Glover to join them? I don't know, that's a spitball. But they definitely should have mentioned it to Daenerys in Season 7. I have always loved this exterior shot of Bear Island. It looks so wonderful. Inside, it's a hard-ass little girl who went fucking viral. I don't think she's the best child actor the show saw, but yeah, she did fine. Especially considering that this is her first professional acting gig. It's not her fault nobody pulled her up on Sandra Lannister.
And Lady Sandra is a Bolton. Who's she Lannister?
You don't want to retake those, Mark? Okay. The meeting is awkward as all get out until the Child Whisperer takes charge and basically uses the same argument Jon did to get the wildlings on board. You're gonna die if we don't unite the North. He gets here using, well...
How is it you understand how I feel?
You never thought you'd find yourself in your position.
Because he was a crabber's son who became a king's hand, and she was a highborn lady who became a highborn lady. Yeah, I don't know, man. This bow is long enough to shoot Rick on from 400 meters.
House Mormont has kept faith with House Stark for 1,000 years. We will not break faith today.
You were about to, though. She offers them her 62 soldiers, which is funny and not insane, so yeah, you can have this one.
Every man from Bear Island fights with the strength of 10 mainlanders.
In the books, Desmond tells Arya that every northerner is worth 10 southern swords. And of course we know that
500 men could hold Winterfell against 10,000.
So if these 62 Bear Island soldiers were defending Winterfell, it would take at least 120,000 average men to take it from them. Davos also mentions the Night King, so I guess the cat's out of the bag on that one, which is good. Cats don't belong in bags. Then they go to Deepwood Motte, which, like, I guess could make sense depending on where the wildling camp was, so whatever. Rebet Glover is uninterested in helping Jon because...
We've only just taken back this castle from the Ironborn. The Boltons helped us do it.
And I have to wonder why it is that the Boltons did that. Balon got the letter about this event in episode 2, so it was still while Roose was in control. I get that Roose would want to rid the north of Iron Islanders, but you know, the last couple times the Boltons reclaimed land from the Iron Islanders, it sure as fuck didn't go back to the right hands. So both Jon and Davos had a turn convincing people to join them to unite the north against the dead, so Sansa gives it a go and...
I would remind you that House Glover is pledged to House Stark. Sworn to answer when called upon.
Oh no. Stick to the script, Sansa. You know, Night King, everyone dies, all that. Glover's refusal from here is well-founded, literally only because nobody told him what's gonna happen if the Boltons remain in charge. Nice going, Sandra. Now tell him his home is a shit heap and you don't want his men anyway. That ought to get him.
And where was King Robb when the Ironborn attacked this castle?
Your mum! The crew shows up at the campsite, which was also Stannis' campsite, because location scouting is hard. Dave explains why they should set up here after they've already set up.
The Snows defeated Stannis as much as the Boltons did.
And the mutineers, and the utter lack of preparedness, and the writers, mainly the writers.
2,000 wildlings, 200 Hornwoods, 143 Masons.
This isn't the first time that House Mason has been mentioned, but I'm gonna choose now to be a dick about it. What's that about, guys? You had a little friend you wanted to name a house after? It's just weird, man. There are so many houses in the book you could have used. The Serwans, who have good reason to rebel against the Boltons in the show. The Flintzes, Dustin, Riswell, Reed, dare I mention. You could have used the Foresters or the Whitehills as a shout out to Telltale, but nah. House Mason.
Never even heard of these people.
Sandra has a go at Jake about Dave's role in his campaign, which is fair given that he's just some dude who showed up and fell in love with Jon's corpse. She insists that they need more men, and Jon lays down a time crunch, because weather.
There's no time. There's no time for that.
There's no time for that.
There's no time. There's no time for any of this.
There's always time for a song.
I don't know, man. Isn't Castle Serwyn like super close to Winterfell? Probably worth it. If you're worried about the Night King, Jon, fuck, now I'm saying it. If you're worried about Rhaegar, he doesn't even have a way through the Walrus yet, because you haven't given it to him. Lady Lannister sees the Mormont Maester handling ravens and remembers that letters exist. And I don't think I have to go into why this is so annoying, so let's instead think about the logistics of getting this letter to Peter. How would you do that? The last Sansa heard, Littlefinger's army was at Moat Cailin.
They're encamped at Moat Cailin as we speak.
Then she told him to fuck off.
Go back to Moat Cailin.
Judging by the distance traveled in this episode alone, that was months ago. He could be anywhere by now, and yet, not only has Sandra lucked out with Lyanna having a Moat Cailin raven randomly on hand, Peter decided to stay put there the whole time, even though he could, just go do some other stuff elsewhere with his huge army. King's Landing might be fun, man. You caused quite the ruckus when you left. Ah well. So that's the Jon Sansa plot. I like 1-1, I like the Bear Island shot, that's about it. It's rather void of character. Davos is good at talking to all children, apparently, and Sansa decides to ask Peter for help without telling Jon just to build dramatic tension, but we'll talk about that more another time. Jimbo takes over the siege of Riverrun because Cersei told him to. Bronn has descended from his place on high where he supped with the gods on sweet ambrosia to resume his role as Jaime's errand boy. Bronn is absolutely a worthwhile inclusion in this plot, of course. Without him, we wouldn't get his unforgettable reunion with Pod, or his complaining about how attractive Jaime is, or his constant mentioning of genitals, which is what humor is.
That's like saying I have a bigger cock than anyone in the Unsullied army.
So obviously they enlarged Bronn's role from the books because he was a fan favorite in the early seasons, but they really had no fucking clue what to do with him. He goes on about the same things he's been going on about since season 4.
You promised me a lordship and a castle and a highborn beauty for a wife.
It just bores me.
You're an anointed knight. That's quite a difference.
Aye, knights don't get paid.
Must resist masculine urge to be pedantic about medieval life. I know he's just salty about the castle. Wonder what happened to Lollys.
A Lannister always
Don't
pays...
say it. Don't fucking say it.
Okay, this one's funny, but I really would like to know what Bronn's been up to since he got bitch slapped by Hotar. Where was he when all of this boring crap was going on?
Deja vu, I just been in this place before, higher on the street.
And we have Brynden Tully's return to the show. Gruff old man. He's too cool to care about you extinguishing his house.
Go on then, cut his throat.
Family, duty, honor. Family comes first.
Cut his throat.
Family, duty, honor. Every Tully child learns our words.
Cut his throat.
Good job, buddy.
We didn't know you were coming because you didn't set a proper perimeter. You just allowed 8,000 men to approach unchallenged.
I understand that in the show, Frey equals woefully incompetent, but come the fuck on. They didn't know he was coming? Nobody sent word that they'd be receiving a huge army led by Jaime fucking Lannister to aid the siege? Who's in charge of this operation? Oh.
Good thing we're friends, or we'd be fucking you in the ass right now.
Firstly, shut up. Secondly, those two things are not mutually exclusive, allow me to assure you. I quite like Jaime in this scene, calmly taking charge, asserting his authority, making use of his know-how. And it's no wonder that I like his behavior here, given that it's lifted pretty much exactly from the books. Makes me miss all the other stuff from Feast though. Imagine if we got Lancel confessing to Jaime that he killed Robert and slept with Cersei, which in the show, he dies without ever learning. Imagine if we got the letter in the fire, anger at Red Ronnet or someone else for insulting Brienne. Ah well. Jaime asks Bronn to organize a parley with Brynden, which is kinda like asking the Hamburglar to organize a parley with Brynden. He gets it done somehow, and the Blackfish starts off strong by asking where Sansa and Arya are.
I don't have them. Pity. Do you wish to resume your captivity?
Burn. Brynden is convinced that Edmure is as good as dead and that bargaining with Jaime is pointless.
Bargaining with Oathbreakers is like building on quicksand.
So this is Jaime dealing with his own reputation. Brynden doesn't give a care about his men's lives and he just wants to stubbornly defend his home.
I was born in this hole, and I'll die in this hole.
I don't have too much against this scene, except I just can't stand what they did with Brynden in general across the show. We got hard-ass, cool, gruff Uncle Alderman in season 3, but now the stakes are higher, much higher. But with this opportunity to showcase his undying devotion to family, the writers instead choose to go hard on Brynden's boner for a building. But don't worry, Brienne will get there next episode and he'll learn that Sansa is safe thanks to Jaime empowering Brienne and... oh, never mind. I get that Jaime is the Kingslayer and an Oathbreaker and all, but it'd be reasonable and I think more interesting if there was a little bit of mutual respect from the orca. So that's riverrun, probably the best part of the episode, and it doesn't rise that high. I like Jamie whacking Blackwalder. In Volantis, Theon asks the kind of thing I would say.
Why do we have to come here?
Let me just say, this scene is extremely difficult to edit around because of boobs. I feel as though Theon should have just stayed on the ship, man. He's clearly uncomfortable and anxious, but at least he has a loving support network.
I don't care what you want, drink.
She asks for the real Theon to come back, forgetting of course that the real Theon was a brat who she constantly made fun of for never accomplishing anything worthwhile, which may have had something to do with his inferiority complex and self-destructive patterns of behavior. Throughout the show, Yara has consistently failed to see her own negative influence on her brother, which is fine, but here, A, she's asking for him to be someone who she did not like or respect and has no need for, which is dumb. And different thing, the writers missed the opportunity for the selfish and braggadocious Yara to reflect on the kind of influence she's been. I know that Ironborn tough,
big cock.
But that's even more of a reason that a moment of introspection for Yara would make for a strong scene. And then, when you think about Theon, yes, recovery from trauma is a lengthy and twisted road. But as a character in a story, he spends this season swinging wildly from brave and capable to cowardly and useless with bugger all impetus, and his tale becomes confused and unfocused in shifting the antagonism he faces from Ramsay to Euron with the flick of a switch. You know, he never at all talks about Ramsay after he leaves the North. One episode after he escaped from the man who enslaved, tortured, and mutilated him, Theon Greyjoy made it out from the depths of hell and doesn't even talk about what happened to the devil when he's reunited with Sansa, who was there with him. Such is the fate of a reverse-engineered story. Dude, there was so much they could have done with Theon, especially in throwing him to Meereen, where he could have bonded with Grey Worm or Varys over the obvious, or talked to Daario about pride and proving yourself, or Daenerys about the perils of conquest. But instead, they relegate him to minor character status and only truly remember his past when it comes time for him to redeem himself in protecting Bran, who isn't a person anymore and has no shits left to give.
I'm tired of watching you cower like a beat dog.
So am I, Yara. It's just stale to see him play these beats out over and over again. I'm probably being overly critical, but that's just because Theon has my favorite story in the books. I'm also purposefully dragging out discussion on this scene because I'm delaying the inevitable. Alfie is really good at this whole acting thing. Ah, fuck it. Let's go, let's do it. Not a single thing about this scene's writing comes close to being anything near good. Having abandoned, disgraced, and angered a guild of master assassins, Arya is brazenly gallivanting around extremely public places in a city which houses said guild of master assassins. Predictably, she gets fucking murdered. I was surprised that they would kill such a featured character at this point in her story, but it's a daring reminder that in this show, nobody is truly safe. Oh dear, oh my. Find me in the Alps, she fucking lives through this. Don't know why the waif didn't go for the throat, but honestly, that shouldn't really matter. Let's go through the wounds Arya actually undergoes. She is 1. Slashed across the abdomen. This on its own is near certainly fatal given where this society is on the tech tree. Her intestines have been gouged. 2. Stabbed in the gut, hilt deep. 3. Stabbed elsewhere in the gut, hilt deep. 4. Said stab wound has a knife twisted in it like 90 degrees while it's still inside her. She then bashes her skull into the waif, ripping the knife out of her. She runs across the bridge and fucking spins through the air like a gymnast. 8 out of 10 good form sloppy landing before exchanging fluids with one of them Lagoon City canals, which notoriously are filthier than a train station kebab. She swims through sewage for a bit and hobbles to the theater where she finds Lady Crane next episode, presumably with her entrails in a little sack off screen. You've probably heard it all before, but this is the stab wound to end all stab wounds, and there is literal shit inside her bloodstream, not only from the sewage, but also from her own intestines. If she doesn't bleed to death, the infections will surely take care of her. Drogo died of an infected stab wound. Just one wound to his upper chest, nowhere near any vital organs. Khal motherfucking Drogo, the undefeated warlord, sexiest man alive. Bruce Bolton got stabbed in the chest once, instantly died. Aya is a teenage girl with massive holes in her vital organs and other people's sewage in her circulatory system. Gee, do you think Lady Crane will know what to do? Fuck, man. Guess Drogo just didn't have the regenerative girl boss genes. So back when this aired, the online discussion saw much in the way of copium. It wasn't actually Aya, many said. She had the pig's bladder from the play under her shirt. Others cried. This is all part of some bigger scheme. They all agreed, knowing that Game of Thrones would never present something this boldly stupid to its adoring audience. This is the show that had Tyrion's mole scheme after all. This show pulled off the Red Wedding. Aya is experienced enough now to not genuinely act like this, but I think deep down we all knew. We knew that the integrity was gone. We knew what kind of story this had become. I would say it's cartoonishly bad, but that's a disservice to cartoons, which are typically self-aware enough to make a joke out of the excess they put their characters through. I've given Cogman so much praise in the past, but man, does this scene make it difficult. Oh my god, it looks so dumb. Job well done. No need to make sure she's dead. I've got other shit to do. Gotta pay my taxes. So that was a video. Look, there's no Bran and there's no Marine, so it can't be that bad, but there is Arya and the High Sparrow doing insane shit, so maybe it can be that bad. The Hound's return to the story is Jon's story is Riverrun is not the worst thing in the world, but I don't love anything in this episode, and the things I like come with plenty of asterisks. Asterisks? Whatever. Thanks for watching. I hope you're all doing well and that you're minimizing time spent on Twitter. Theory streams are coming back and I'm uploading VODs to the second channel. Fucking subscribe. I'll be streaming on this channel and at twitch.tv/GlytusLive just to see what that's like, so go follow me there if you don't want to miss anything. Thanko mucho to aglahir, Org, Aviator, Galactic Archive, HailTheOrange, Apple, Hoverarm, Ingvald, Jamez, joshie-bear, Fire, Magnus, moremoths, Nurse Ratchet, Inch Walrus, Polly, Richard, Shrimp3r JR, Simcoe, Stay78, STL Gooner, Waffl, Yenn, and Ondy. They're my patrons and they're all cute. Predictably, she gets fucking murdered.